everybody, and welcome to Attendance Bias. I am your host, Brian Weinstein. It's a family affair today on Attendance Bias because my guests for this episode are father and son Jeff and Ben Fortgang. Jeff and Ben chose to discuss the Phish show from July 15th, 2016 at the Gorge, the legendary outdoor amphitheater in Gorge, Washington. When Ben told me that his dad is a veteran taper who went to over 300 Grateful Dead shows, but it was Ben who got his father into Phish, there was so much more I wanted to know. As you'll hear in this episode, my parents know absolutely nothing about my Phish obsession. Well, they know about it, but they're far from understanding it and even farther from participating in it. So the opportunity to explore the musical relationship between a father and a son, their adventure to the Gorge, it was immediately compelling. Add the fact that I grew up in the same general area of New York as Ben and Jeff, and we have unknowingly been to at least a dozen of the same shows. There was so much more to explore. Once Ben brought the first night of the Gorge in 2016 up, I was flooded with memories. Most of the memories were not of the music, though. They were more of the journey to the venue, the vibe once we got inside, and the stunning visuals that surround the stage. I was so eager to dive back into the show and relive that first night of my only visit to this unique venue. So fill up your gas tank, get your camping pass, and pack your hoodie as we join Jeff and Ben Fortgang to take a look back at July 15th, 2016 at the Gorge. Ben, Jeff, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Attendance Bias. How are you guys doing today?
Great. Looking forward to this.
We're doing good, Brian. Thanks for having us on.
I've never had two guests on at once, so I'm really interested to see how my moderating skills come out, if I have any.
Yeah. We have to figure out how we're going to stop stepping all over each other.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Well, you guys are father and son, so you've had a lot of practice, I guess, with that.
That's more yelling over each other.
Yeah. The mellow commentary is not something we're great at.
Well, nothing has to be mellow here. That's totally fine, especially about this show. Mm-hmm. But to get started, I just wanted to ask, where are you guys coming to us from? Where do you live?
We're out in Long Island. We're out in Suffolk County.
I'm also from Long Island. I grew up my whole life in Merrick. It's always been a breeding ground for deadheads and also for Phish heads too, big time, all over the place. So my understanding, Jeff, is that you've seen 300 or more Dead shows, and then it was Ben who brought you in to see Phish.
Yeah, it's true. I got into the Dead when I was about 16. Buddy of mine had older brothers. They kept trying to, my beginnings in music, kind of funny. My first was, think about it, I was born in 64. I saw the Dead for the first time when in 80, but it was Kiss. Then it went to Cheap Trick. Then it went to Neil Young, Springsteen, and then I found the Dead. And for me, it was, although I love all kind of music, you can get on my iPod. I listen to everything, but from 1980 till 95, it was all Dead all the time. Traveled, got to see the country, lived with a bunch of guys we were all into it. We all were tapers. I started taping very quickly. I loved it. I grew up with the Dead really behind the soundboard. It was interesting because you listened to the music, but you didn't speak. You didn't really share your opinions. You just nodded at each other when Jerry did something hot. And you just had your microphone. You had your flashlight in your mouth, watched your ears, and make sure you had good audio. And I loved it. And I married a girl who was, Ben's mom was just the most incredible. She didn't really give a shit about the Dead, but she let me buy. We didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, but I still had my Dead equipment, and I would hit the road and just go. And so I was really, really in a lost place when Garcia died. And Phish, just real quickly, Phish was around, obviously, and a lot of the guys who were in the taping scene, they all had these Phish stickers. They all told me to come. You should check it out. What are you doing? Why wasting money just on Dead only? And I said, because I'm not going to go watch a bunch of guys who jump on trampolines and blow into vacuum cleaners. And I missed out.
And that's all you need to know about them, right? They jump on trampolines and play vacuum cleaners. That's all there is.
That's all they do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It was
self-proclaimed.
Right?
And so you mentioned how your Deadhead friends, your taper friends got you into Phish. Ben, how did you get into Phish? Was it from your dad or was that more independent?
No, it was really independent. I think that I had a similar music kind of journey with falling in love. Beatles number one. That's kind of what opened the door to music for me. And then really, I played saxophone, so I got into jazz and a little more like exploratory music in that sense. My dad brought me to a ton of shows as a kid. I remember seeing Rat Dog at Old Westbury Theater, like, oh my God, 30 people in there, maybe 50 people.
I think I was one of them, by the way.
Great shows. I love them.
No, they're great. But I fell in love with that scene, the Dead scene. And my dad had these Phish tapes lying around that he didn't have any interest in. And he had the live Phish companion box, like it was a binder. Yeah, the CD is like versions 1 through 20. And I really, as a young kid, fell into them after we saw Trey open up for Tom Petty, I think 07 it was, at the Garden. Again, half empty theater. We didn't realize what tickets we had until we walked in. We were all in the front row, and we didn't know who Trey was, kind of knew of Phish. He ended the set with First Tube, and I said, I got to dig into his stuff a little bit more. Dug into my dad's CDs, fell in love with the harpuas and the storytelling more so than anything with Phish.
That was Ben's bedtime stories.
Yeah, I like on my own would fall asleep. It was either night after night, either the Dead Pod, listening to a random Dead show, or Phish and listening to some story time from Trey. And in 09, I went to a show at MSG at the December 3rd. So
I was there. Yep.
Almost 11-year anniversary tomorrow. I'm realizing. Yeah. So went with my sister.
Wow. Was
blown away. Punch opener, like from the first note. Knew this was my next thing. And then for the whole next year was telling my dad, "You got to check him out. Got to check him out." I played Numberline for him because I thought it had kind of Jerry licks in it, nice approachable song, and in true Phish fandom form, he looked up every version of it that had been played that year and kind of got into it from that song. And then we brought him to Jones Beach 2010.
So I just want to correct one thing about it. Yes, my friends, my taper buddies, a lot of them, not all, a lot of guys with dead snobs like me, but a good many of them were Phish heads. And I did not participate. I did not go to a single show. I did not ask for a tape. I just didn't give a shit. It was all dead. So it was Ben who truly brought me in from a blank slate. I knew nothing about them. I had no history of them. And, just the trampoline shit that I mentioned. And Benny said, please, the whole driving thing is that he wanted me to take him to the show. He obviously wasn't driving yet, and he needed me to be a chauffeur. And in order to get me into it, we sat in the car, he played Numberline. I said, that's pretty good. I went back, I listened, I went with him, go to the show, open up with Fluffhead. They do a Cities, a Reba, a Wilson, rock and roll. Imagine that's your first show. I was like, by the end of Fluff, I was like, holy, jumping up and down. And it's been, over 100 shows since then.
So you knew backwards down the Numberline before you got to Jones Beach, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So scene for scene, parking lot, vibe in the audience, sound coming from the stage. What were your thoughts compared to what you were used to in the Dead?
When I was into the Dead, it was a dirty, grindy, just really shitty scene. To get me to buy a grilled cheese sandwich in a parking lot that just wasn't happening. That was not me. But the shakedown, I found that the scene in the parking lot was one of the first, if not the first time that I actually got that vibe of a community type of experience musically. It wasn't people who were going to a Pearl Jam show because they went to 2 Pearl Jam shows a year, or maybe the Buffett shows, but I've never seen them. And the vibe was, all of a sudden it took me back to this it's a community. It's not just people coming in for a show because it's a local show. And I found that really immediately pretty heartwarming. I really love that. I was also in a real different head because I was there with my children. I took Ben and his sister, and music's always been a huge part of my life, and having that to share with my kids was amazing. So when I got to that lot, I really felt different the first time since, I went to a lot of Dead shows, The Dead, as further.
The other ones, yep.
The other ones, and the scene it was okay, but it was a lot of it was a lot of people, I think, jumped on it because it's cool to jump on it now. And there were a lot of people who love the music. So I kind of got into that scene. I did notice it was a much younger scene than I remember than the Dead.
At Phish.
At Phish. A definite, much more collegey. I saw a few people, traveling around, my age, a lot of, some gray beards.
Now I'm one of them.
Yeah, man. I'm a little bit older than you.
It blows my mind that it's been 11 or 10 years since then. But we've all gotten a little bit older since those shows, and
So that was, and then we went in and we had, at the time we owned this little box section down on the floor there, and we'd seen a bunch of shows there because I owned it for the whole season, and those guys came out. I was amazed. The thing that really amazed me, well, the music blew me away with fluff, but the reaction from the crowd, the sing-along, the glow sticks, which I had never experienced, which I am I'm like a
sucker for glow
I'm
sticks.
A sucker for glow sticks.
he's like a little rager.
I'm like a little kid.
Yeah.
And I love that. And then what really also struck with me is that there were kids in the box next to us, and literally holding each other. It was just pure joy. They didn't look stupid. They looked like they were just so happy. And
it's pure.
Struck me. Mm-hmm. It was the Dead vibe again.
I remember at the show you were cracking up at this little dude next to us who knew every single word. And you're like, how does this guy know because he didn't look like, not that there is a typical fan look. But
no, he was not. He was not. But he, it was just the community scene. It definitely hit me. And then when you added in how spectacular a band they were, holy shit, I was drawn in. Note one.
And you mentioned that how it was a little different for you because you were with your children. And the reason that I got back to Ben on Phish.net was because you mentioned that you and your father would like to be on together. And that's unique. When I was getting into Phish, it was like with my parents, I was into it and they kind of didn't know, and I don't know about didn't want to know, but they weren't that interested. We shared musical bonds, pretty much Billy Joel and the Beatles, like the safest white bread stuff you could get into. And the only show that I remember seeing with my dad, that my dad took me, was at Jones Beach. It was in 1996, and it was Jethro Tull with Emerson, Lake and Palmer opening.
Good show, man.
It was a good show. And I was so excited. But my point is, the reason I bring that up is because my dad and I never shared that musical bond aside from the basic stuff that everyone might listen to on family road trips, stuff like that. So I'm wondering if you go, and you said now you go with your sister, right? You go with your siblings, Ben. So do you like family dynamics kick in when you're at a Phish show together, or is it just like you're all just fans in a group?
We're so biased as family first has just been a staple of ours and a mission statement. So I think it didn't until I actually met my girlfriend of almost 4 years now at SPAC. And all of a sudden I got indoctrinated. I did Phish for so long with just, it was me, my dad, my sister. It was never weird because that's just how I knew Phish. And that's just how I did Phish. And God bless him for bringing us to all these shows and, making the road trips and getting the tickets. So at no point did it ever cross my mind like this is weird or this is unique or this is odd, because we liked sharing those moments together. It didn't get weird until I got a little bit older, wanted to experiment more, was all of a sudden surrounded with other people that thought it was maybe odd. Gave it one or two shows and they're like, no, this is the most beautiful, special thing ever, watching us hug each other and cry at shows together. There's nothing better than that. So, no, I'd say it's something that was just been inbred in our experience from day one. So it doesn't strike us as odd or weird at all. Plus all the positive feedback we always get from everyone helps it as well, because it is, like you said, it's a special, unique, beautiful thing that we get to have.
Yeah, I get choked up just thinking about it right now. Even just listen, I'm a big family guy. That's on my headstone. It's husband, father, and everything I love, I want to share with my kids because I didn't have these experiences with my dad. My dad was, not a music guy. He wasn't a really warm kind of huggy type guy. He wasn't, and I wanted to share everything I loved with my kids. And this is why this show that we're going to discuss was so extraordinary for me.
Phish, specifically summer 2016, they played a very long tour that year. It started in the Midwest, which is kind of odd. They usually end in the Midwest, but they started there toward the end of June, shows in Minnesota, Chicago, Deer Creek, and then they did that big East Coast run. I saw them twice at the Man that year, and the shows were, in my opinion, kind of uneven. I know we're under a no criticism rule here, based on our
no criticism rules.
Yeah, but I didn't love, especially the second night at the Man. Wasn't a huge fan. They went to Syracuse where they but they had 5 days off, and then that's when it picked up on the West Coast in the Gorge for 2 nights, down to San Fran, Los Angeles, Chula Vista, and then Lock-In Festival at the end of August. And then, of course, the blowout at Dick's. So that year I went to the Man. I was at these 2 nights at the Gorge, went to San Francisco to meet my girlfriend's family for the first time. And she's from San Fran. So those 3 nights were awesome.
Great
and then
show.
we went down to LA, which was less than spectacular. And I'll leave it at that. So where were you guys in 2016 that led you out from New York to Washington?
2016 Gorge, I had X'd off saying, I need to go there. This is going to be my big Phish trip. I want to check out the Gorge. I hear great things. I think it's part of like the necessary treks as a fan that you need to make. And
Sure, it's a checklist. It's a rite of passage, sort of.
Exactly. And very, very last minute, my sister and my dad said, yeah, we'll come with you. And thank God they did, because I would have been a lost puppy at the Gorge. Now, looking back and having done it twice, it kicks your ass getting there, let alone experiencing it. Getting to the Gorge, I knew I wanted to go. My dad last minute joined. My sister even after that joined in, so much so that she flew into Seattle the day of the show and then went to the Gorge show. She must have been in daze for that first night going into that show. I think I covered it all, unless there's any other notes you have.
I'll just say, looking through 16, I'm looking back through my Phish.net shows, it was probably, I'd probably done 50 some odd shows by the time I got to that one. And we had already done Super Bowl. We did Super Bowl. We had, Ben and I had gone out to the Bill Graham. We did the Zeppelin show.
I love that show so much. That Zeppelin show. Oh my God.
That show was so special. That's another one that comes up, but the Gorge was a little different for me, which I'll get into with you after. We had done we did the Walk and Glen shows in 15, but in 16, early 16, I guess, was the first shows in Riviera Maya. And we did those shows together. Then we came back and we did a big break. We didn't go again until Hartford, a week before they did the Gorge. It was on the 9th. And it was the only show I went to where I was sick. And I just didn't dig the show because I was sick. And that was the only reason why. And Ben remembered it as a good show. And then he decided he wanted to do the Gorge. And I said, you know what? I want to do it. I never got there. I want to do it. Let's just do it. We're able to afford it. Let's go and have some fun. I wanted to give the kids things I couldn't do, which it was hard for me to travel around when I was young with the Dead. So we flew out there. Ben and I flew out there. We spent the night in Seattle. Got ourselves a rented pickup truck to act like a bunch of tough guys out west, and we
city slickers
hit the Denny's for the midnight
Grand Slams.
Yeah,
that was delish.
And then Hannah landed. We got Han. We went, and we are driving, and we're driving through Seattle and the beautiful trees and the beautiful cliffs and everything. Then we're out on the outskirts of the city, and there is nothing. It's flat.
Yep.
And you have these alien-looking watering systems, and there's nothing. And I'm driving going, what the hell did I just do? Flying across the country to not even, I used to love traveling to Dead shows on the East Coast. You pass by these beautiful, I'm like, there's nothing here. Why do people rave about this? And I'm like, this sucks. And we park in an open field because we weren't staying on the premises. because I'm not a big, at this point in my life, I'm not a big camping out guy.
Sure.
Like, stayed at a hotel. And we get there, we're parked in the lot, and we're talking to people, we're having a good time, getting psyched. We know we're going to go see the band. But I'm also saying to myself, what the hell did I just do? This is crazy. So the scene I'll give you, we start walking towards the theater. And, if you get to that area where you begin moving uphill.
Yeah, it ascends, yeah.
It ascends, and you see, like, on the sides, you've got the food, the beer, you've got, this, and, stop, let's grab something to eat. And I'm just like, grab a couple of beers, and I'm walking going, what's the big deal about here? And I think some guy comes up behind us and like said, welcome to, and I said, yeah, I'm looking forward. He goes, you've never been here? And he goes, get ready.
Yeah.
We get to the top of the cliff. And as we said, family for us is a real big thing. And I get choked up every time I think of it. This is the reason I brought up the show. I get to the top of that cliff and I look over. Thankfully, I had my sunglasses on because I just started crying. And the fact that my children were with me was just, that's the reason I picked this show, is that moment of hitting the top of that peak. Mm-hmm. For someone who loves live music as much as I do, someone who loves music, for someone who has a ton and travel that has this passion and this commitment to music, taping and listening, and then having my children with me.
There's no words to express it, despite the fact that we're both on a podcast in front of microphones trying our best. Ben, you nailed it. It's like it took forever to get there. It really had the feel of the festivals that they used to have in Loring, Maine, Loring Air Force Base in Limestone, Maine, which is 5 miles north and 10 miles east is Canada. Like, that's how far up and out of the way it is. And you would just be on the road for 24 hours in traffic, and just, it really feels like you're in the middle of nowhere. And then all of a sudden this huge, breathtaking scene is set up right in front of you. It really had the feel of a festival. We were camping on site, so we had that part of it too. We met up with a few friends, and when I hit the top of that hill, my jaw dropped. I felt very small all of a sudden. Just as a person, as a soul, I felt very small, like I was seeing Phish at the ends of the earth.
I like the way you said that.
But like you said, it's so big and sweeping that you don't even notice the weather or anything, because you're just looking at this vast landscape and the sunset that happens for 3 hours. It never ends.
You've got to experience the venue, not the show. The show is just a side. It's just a side.
I don't remember anything about the first set because, like you said, I was just looking to my left to the sunset the whole time.
Unbelievable.
I couldn't get over it. And it was, I won't say just ancillary that Phish was there, but it was all like Jeff, like you said, they weren't the focus. It wasn't about the band. Right. It wasn't even necessarily about the music. It was about everything.
I think what I love about Phish so much is no matter, and why I keep coming back, it's, yeah, the scene's great. Yeah, I got my family. Yeah, I got my friends. But it's really because it's 4 guys making the best music that I think you could possibly find. Yeah, and it doesn't matter where you're doing it. Doesn't matter what they're playing. I just want to see where they're going to take it. And to all of a sudden have that be second to your experience, it makes the Gorge what it is.
So let's get into the show. We're there, the band comes on, and they open a 2-night show at this legendary venue with Tweezer. Jaws dropped everywhere.
Awesome.
Yeah. Love Tweezer. Tweezer's my song I will take at any show ever. It's my vehicle of choice. I love Tweezer. I think what I remember from that Tweezer is we were still kind of trying to find our spot. And I think I was reading your notes, and you mentioned on the odd, someone's like, oh, this is this great spot. It sounds perfect. And we happened to be right in between 2 speakers. So we were still kind of wandering around, and where we ended up for the show was we found a friend who was at the bottom where the gate is. So
the fence line right by the rocks.
Yep.
And so probably under there at the end of the Tweezer. But yeah, the cool Tweezers or the show didn't go like crazy deep.
I think with Tweezer, I think there are certain songs, there were dead tunes, of course, when you heard the first notes of A Morning Dew. or, China Rock. There's always those iconic songs that when it's placed, you get that different elevation from the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And Tweezer is definitely one that the raw it's always a raw, or there always that excitement of particularly an opening note.
Mm-hmm.
But when they drop that note, it's just, it's a roar. It's not like a yes. It's just just a primal.
Yeah. There's no just like subtle head nods. It's high fives.
It's right into it.
Right. I mean, they're sending a message in a way, not in words, but just we're here. We mean business, and we mean fun business.
Mm-hmm.
It is pretty short, right? It is an opener. They're very much in the first set opener mind frame that let's get it going, but we can't stay on too long. And they go into a back-to-back kind of first set specials of Sample in a Jar. That's very good. It's like a great number 2 hitter.
Yep, I agree. No, that's great placement and a good version. I liked it a lot.
And then moving on to the Old Home Place, which they hadn't played in a while. I think I wrote down since 2012.
Nice, yeah. And I love that song. I think my bluegrass, Fishgrass song of choice is probably Old Home Place. So I was thrilled to have it.
And to back that up, then it's Wolfman's Brother, which I think of it's kind of switched places since I first started seeing the band. In 3.0, it's Wolfman's is a good, reliable, like first set with Back on the Train, like kind of a 10-minute first set, 4 or 5 songs in, type 1 jam energy boost.
I think the last couple of years, particularly, I think 2019 brought some really good Wolfmans. I don't know if this is a standout version, but it keeps the energy going from that Tweezer opener, which I think the set kind of becomes a tale of two sets, like towards the back.
At a weird side note, we love that because Ben's a hairy bastard, and we always tell his brother Jacob, who does not join us in most shows, that he's the Wolfman's brother.
He's the Wolfman's brother.
So we get a little kick out of that.
That's right.
So, but it's good. It reaches a lot of peaks. Wolfman's brother does here. It doesn't veer off its typical progression, but it does what it needs to do. It does, and it does a really good job of it.
Yeah, like I think that 2016 gets a lot of knock for. I'm not sure why. Probably just coming off of the heels of 2015. But I do think the Type 1 playing in 2016, particularly the West Coast of this summer tour, was really good from what I remember, and deserves another listen.
I think that it's what you said, that 2015 was such a peak year that it would be hard for any other year to measure up. But also they were introducing a lot of songs to the rotation that were not universally well received. There's a lot of songs off Big Boat, like Tide Turns or Breath and Burning, and that's not going to get you going.
No, it's a good point. But I
don't critique, but there are certain songs I do not.
Fair enough.
I don't have a problem if they're not played. Yeah, that's a tough album.
But and also they introduced the Marimba Lumina, which
I was going to say, I actually was looking at my notes of the show. And like I said, I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit because I said I don't critique. Every time Trey got up and went behind that goddamn thing, I don't know if you liked it yourself. And I'm not judging you. I couldn't stand it. I'm like, and I like when guys do. I like when they do things.
Yeah, you allowed Jerry to do the MIDI.
Yeah, I love Jerry. I love when Jerry was playing the violin through his guitar. Yeah. I loved it because I have thousands of hours of Jerry hitting regular shows, so I didn't have a problem. But that thing, for whatever reason, that was straight to the bathroom.
Yeah. But it was every year, or even at most tours, Trey gets a new toy.
Yeah.
Always. In 2010, it was the whammy pedal. In 2015, it was the Mutron pedal, because he was preparing for Fare Thee Well.
Yeah.
And in 2016, it was the Marimba Lumina. And I think that it kind of, you asked what I thought of it, but it's also, what do you think of drums and space? It depends on the night. It depends on your headspace. I think that most people's reactions to the Marimba Lumina is kind of what you said. It depends on your taste, and it depends on the night. It could be introspective and deep and close your eyes and flow with it, or it could be, who needs a beer? I'm going out to take a piss. It depends on the night. But for this, it didn't come in until much later. After... Where did we leave off? Wolfman's Brother, right? So after that...
we got the Bouncing.
And then Bouncing, we were going into Bouncing.
Yep, which is still, I think, the most accessible Phish song, maybe along with Sample in a Jar and Farmhouse. It's always welcome.
I love it.
I like Bouncing.
I love it.
It gets weird hate, and I think that falls over from 1.0 for some reason, but it's a song everyone loves. I agree. It's silly that.
Well, it got a lot of hate in 1.0 because they're carbon copies of one another, and that's the snobby Phish heads who think that everything has to be jammed out.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said for writing a perfect 4-minute song that is always fun.
I agree with you. I'm happy. Every time I hear it, I'm happy.
And then they moved on to Undermined, where Trey was on his Echoplex pedal, and Page began to play the lead melody for a few seconds, and they almost ended early. And a recurring theme by this point that I heard re-listening to the show is that Page takes over a lot in this set. He was really leading the way.
Yeah, it's nice when he's leading jams. I personally love when Mike is leading jams a lot. I think that those take jams to the best spot. But 2016 and 17, I think a lot of Baker's Dozen shows has Page pushing the envelope, saying, no, let's explore this a little bit more. But yeah, I definitely hear a lot of that in this show and during that Undermine particularly.
And then they come back with Kill Devil Falls, which always takes me back to Jones Beach, because the year before you guys saw them there, when they came back in June 2009, they debuted it here. And I remember at the time, a lot of fans were split on it. A lot of people loved it just because it's an upbeat rocker. And since we're kind of mixing Phish and Dead here, a lot of people just called it Phish's Alabama Getaway.
Yeah, that's
just because of the giddy up, and I don't think that's inaccurate.
Getaway's a good tune.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing; it's not an insult.
Yeah, no, it's a good comparison. I mean, it's the same with the Ocelot, Tennessee Jet, or whatever.
I have some personal. I have personal. You know, I like the message
of Kill Devil Falls.
Yeah, I like the message. It resonates with me for certain ways, but and I like it. I like it.
Song rips. I love Kill Devil Falls.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah.
And it's built. It's gotten better, as a lot of Phish songs do.
Yeah.
Then we go Lawn Boy.
We got the Ass Hand, Lawn Boy.
Lawn Boy and Ass Handed.
Lawn Boy, yeah.
Well, Lawn Boy
back to back. I also think songs like Lawn Boy are what make Phish Phish, and why I personally love them. I love Theatrics, Antics, all that crap.
Yeah, Benny's into that stuff more than Dad is. You know, I'm not. He loves. He's like I said. He when he first found Phish, my wife and I and my daughter have rooms downstairs. My 2 boys are upstairs. And I would literally hear Phish coming out from underneath his door at night when he was a kid. He was like, he found the music. It was what were you, 10, 12, something 12, like that?
Something, yeah.
Right. And he put himself to sleep, and he loved those. He loves even when they do it now. It still it hits a warm spot for him.
Yeah, that's great.
Lawn Boy makes me smile. You know, it's funny, but I'm not. It's to me, it's just a song. It's a funny, goofy song.
Yeah.
Other people revere it.
Well, at the Baker's Dozen, I think a lot of us revered it for sure, but that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
And so Page came out. He said, "Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Gorge." And Trey made a joke. He said, "I love the drumming in this song," which I thought was a pretty good one, which led into Ass Handed because that's Fishman's newest song. This was its debut.
Yeah. Funny. I laughed.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the hell was going on. I couldn't catch the lyrics.
No, but you're like, what are they saying?
I couldn't catch the lyrics.
Like, I don't know what the fuck they're saying.
What are they saying?
But I think the outro is bad. It reminds me of Fuck Your Face with like that sick outro that you want them to sing with.
It reminds me of Ha Ha Ha, actually, where it's like the Phish song where it's like these goofy, weird lyrics, but it has a pretty strong rock and roll riff.
Yeah. Zeppelin show. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. And so after Ass Handed, Trey says, "Let's do another John Fishman song. These two are related somehow." and they went into Party Time, which I love. It's since they debuted it.
Mm-hmm.
Party Time's a fun part. It's a party song.
It'll be a party time, man.
And then we step into the Big Boat era of the set, which is the Lion and Tide Turns back to back.
The Line is at that point. Had they been playing the Line quite a bit by then?
Oh yeah, and I think you turned to me and you're like, I like the song. I don't care about the haters.
I don't care about the haters. I don't give a shit about the haters. I don't mind the song. I love the line of I love the genesis of the song. Is Trey watching this, and Trey's such a positive, upbeat guy, and he picks this horrible moment in this guy's life, the worst moment in his life. And Trey turns it, and I kind of thought to myself at that point, I'm like, maybe he's not that normal,
No, he's not normal. He might look okay, but he
fucking wicked song that on somebody's worst moment. But I like the whistling. I got no problem with that song. I like the song.
And he talks about how Trey does when he was pulled over on, I think it was 91, right? Whitehall, New York, how he thanked the cop for pulling him over.
Yeah.
He has a way of seeing the worst moments of someone or his own life as putting a positive
spin. Right up in the beacon. Yeah.
He even shows, he said, listen, he's like, let's try to look at the positives here. Like, I made this happen. He definitely spins things in
sobriety has had an impact on him, and, it's.
But light,
Yeah, and we're all benefiting from it. And then it went into Tide Turns, which I see in line with, pardon the pun, with the Line, that it would fit in perfectly at like an afternoon set or a Beacon Jam set. I don't know if it fit the vibe at the Gorge right here. I think this was when people were like, all right, I'm going to go get a beer.
Yeah, you're so right.
I remember at set break, some dude turning to us being like pretty pissed. And he's like, I can't believe I drove all the way. He's like, that set started off so hot. And then for them to do that, and we're always so positive. We're like, we thought it was okay.
Yeah.
And then we saw him again later in the show, and he had a completely different reaction. It was like, that was the show I've ever seen.
Tide Turns. I think the way I'm going to think about it, you've now embedded in my brain forever that was a Beacon song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a perfect Beacon song.
Yeah.
You got that. You put that. That's the way I will always think of that song.
And they closed the set soon after that, right, with Rift and Walls of the Cave. Awesome combo.
I agree. I've always appreciated Walls of the Cave. Very early on in my Phish fandom was 111 where they closed the first set, and Benny and I. This is when they still had assigned seats on the floor at the Garden, and that was this first time I heard Walls of the Cave, and I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah, we kept asking what was that song, and they're like Walls of the Cave. We're like, no, the next one. We thought it was two different songs.
Yeah.
Because it has such a big turn at the end, but we love it.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a great set ender.
Yeah,
it is.
I can't think of where else you would put it in a set. It is almost a perfect.
set. It's interesting when you say that, because when we talk about the Dead, one of the things that really was sad for me at the end was that they basically had 5 openers, 3 or 4 set closers. And you just knew your list of songs was so small that you'd hate them. But Walls of the Cave, I'm never disappointed hearing it. Yeah. Even though I know it's always going to be, as you said, 95% of the time it's going to be at the end of the set, doesn't matter. I'm never unhappy when it comes out. Then we rip into set 2.
Yep. So starting with the second set, I love this set. I am such a sucker for setlist games and antics where they weave in and out. I can't get enough of it.
I love it.
One of my first favorite tapes was Phish played in Orlando at a nightclub called The Edge in, I think it's April 30th, 94. And during David Bowie, during the intro, they played a riff from every song they played previously in that set.
Yeah.
Just to close with Bowie. It was like it encapsulated. And I'm like, no other band I've ever heard does this or would ever think to do this.
That was the night of my 30th birthday. And
Happy birthday.
April 30th, 94. I was 30 years old, and I missed it because I blew everything with them. And oh my God, a club.
But the reason I bring this up is because this set kind of threw me back to that, where it was basically 5 songs. I mean, it really might be 6 on the set list, but it's really just 5 with
weaving in and out.
With a weave.
No means.
And they opened with Cross-Eyed and Painless, and I said, just like Walls of the Cave is a perfect set 1 closer, Cross-Eyed and Painless is the perfect set 2 opener.
Awesome. That's one of those special raw sounds from the crowd That's a special one. So the next song is you're going to bring up is the one that I'm just going to say something about it, is that, so Benjamin he loves the song What's the Use. Yeah. I didn't know it that well. Even though I'd been to a number of shows, I didn't know it that well. And he was standing in front of me. My daughter was standing with me. He was up against the fence line that we mentioned. And it comes on, and I could just see, and again, I get emotional about this because, as I've said, for me, it's not just the music, it's the experience with my kids. And I see him just get really emotional. I see him start really getting emotional. He was crying. His hands were up like this. And I just grabbed my daughter, I put my arms around her, and I said, just look at that. That's just like...
Yeah, it's the best.
Look at that. It's just, that's what it's all about.
So Ben, what does it do for you? Like, what is it about What's the Use?
It's it. I mean, that song is it, and it's that. There's specific versions I remember that really take me there. One being Magna Ball, with just maybe not even the playing, but just the absolute silence of the entire crowd is a moment that you rarely get with Phish. Phish is usually a rock and roll, hands in the air, going nuts. So those like really nice, quiet, everyone hanging on to a note is what you get to experience with What's the Use, which is probably why I love it so much. With the Dead ties that we've been doing, Stella Blue is like a song I love. And like, it's because you hang on to every single note and that Jerry's playing or singing or the band's playing. And you get that with What's the Use. And I got there with the Gorge with this one, and between being there, getting there, hearing that song, which I happen to be chasing. And whenever you're chasing a song, that means you're not going to get to hear it.
Of course not.
Typically how it goes. And I was really hoping to hear it. So I was thrilled to get it. But this What's the Use was the highlight for me of that set at the time.
But my favorite part is toward the very end, that this song is so delicate. It's so soft. It's very dynamic. And Fishman has these Keith Moon-like drum fills, but they're with so much touch, which, as big a Who fan as I am, Keith Moon did not have touch at all, right? He was like Animal, like, hitting everything as much as he could. Fishman plays some fills in What's the Use that go about 90 miles per hour, but he sounds like the most graceful jazz drummer in the world. So it was like two of my favorite things blended together perfectly.
He is so effortless.
That's a good way to put it.
Effortless.
Yeah. I mean, that is John Fishman, and that's what he does, and that's why the band's named after him, because he's doing these ridiculous jazzy drum fills and pockets that are so effortless and so loud, but so subtle. He's barely moving. Yeah. He's a brilliant master.
He's brilliant.
We talk about him all day.
And he showed it on that too, man. That was...
Yep. And so the next song is really a change of pace when you go from that outer space, What's the Use, to the grounded funk of No Man in No Man's Land. And to me, this is where the whole set took a turn. This is where the gags really started. I think it's just when Trey thinks something is funny, he just has to keep doing it. Like everyone has to think it's
like
funny.
spatchcock and
Like spatchcock.
The pen
And science.
The ping.
the pan.
The pan.
The pen. And I screamed. Yeah. Everything has to be hilarious. And I think quoting Cross-Eyed and Painless Cross-Eyed and Painless in No Man's Land, and then mixing them together. And what's the use later on in the set? We'll get there. But once he got it in his head, he's like one of my middle school students who thinks something's goofily hilarious for all day and no one else gets it.
I loved it. I loved it
too. And
I loved it.
I mean, I just remember having so much fun at this point. I could picture myself here right now. Yep. I was just I wouldn't even say at peace with the world because I wasn't calm. I was like jumping up and down. I was dancing. Everything was good.
It was dance party. I remember total crowd eruption, good vibe. This was one of those shows, and probably this track in particular is what I remember everyone really going apeshit for.
Oh, yeah.
But it was one of those sets that when it finished up, everyone's high-fiving, going nuts, like high energy. And it really started from this No Man's and just went through the entire rest of the set. Because, like you said, the cool down from what's the use, it's kind of hard to get out of that.
Yeah.
And see where the set's going to go. And they did a really nice job.
Yeah. Toward the end, Trey plays a tease of Stash, and I think he wanted in his heart of hearts for the whole band just to come together at the same time, and God bless him. And just not this time.
Yeah, a little train wrecky, but I'm happy they stumbled into it.
Yeah, it's good. It's all in good fun.
But I like the Stash a lot, and I was happy to listen to it again today. That I totally forgot about it because I don't think there's a lot of standout versions, and I wouldn't call this one a standout, but it was different and weird, and part of it fit in with the show really well with what they were doing with experimenting and trying different things on these songs.
And then your heart can swell again because they come back in with a "What's the use" quote toward the middle and end of it. Love this. It makes the whole set at this point, I think, felt very cohesive. Whereas a lot of first sets in 2016 were kind of like jukebox, like a lot of songs, 12 or 13 songs in a set. This really felt like one giant piece of music split up into different songs.
Yeah, well said. That's what it was. It was nice.
Yep. And then into Ghost, which is immediate, like right after Stash ends, they start it right away. And I wrote down, this is a flawless set list.
I actually was hoping they did a little more with this Ghost, and I think this is the one where they kind of all do drum solo, marimba, or get
Marimba Lumina, yeah.
Lumina, yeah. And I think if this Ghost went a little bit deeper, we would actually be talking about one of the better sets of the entire year here. But I think that they didn't take the jam to a place, or like too quickly went to that Marimba Lumina for my own liking personally.
For my liking, they were doing Still Waiting guitar teases at 20 seconds, and then What's the Use at about 2 minutes. So I was just, bring more.
Fun.
Do whatever you want.
Kevin, man, for me, it used to just be tapes. Now it's with social, with the internet and stuff. You have thousands of times you can listen to Phish playing straight Phish rock and roll, killing music. These are the special ones, and I think they do it, and I think they also understand where they are when they do it. I think that the Gorge is a special place. I think that they, if they're playing in Hartford, they're probably not doing this set. They get the moment. They get the moment, and they still, they don't throw the set away by being bad at what they do.
Correct.
They just live up to the moment, and I like that.
And it goes right into Chalk Dust Torture, which is an incredible call, because normally at this point you get something like Dirt or
What's the Use
or another What's the
yeah. No, but I hear you saying a slower one. The Chalk Dust again kept the party going and the high energy going. It was a short one and good, and I think that I don't remember when they kind of stopped doing the really extended Chalk Dust, because they had some really crazy ones in 2014, and I think that this one could have went there. But I was a really big fan of the transition into the meat stick.
Me too, and I think it was accidental, like a happy accident.
Exactly.
Yeah, Benny's a meat stick guy. Loves it.
Well, it was like it was spaced into it, like really nice.
Yeah, well, they tried that coda at the end of Chalk Dust Torture, with the climb, and Fishman does the really fast paradiddles. And Trey, one of them slowed down. I don't know if it was Fishman or Trey, but one of them slowed down, and they just kind of abandoned. They just jumped ship rather than try to finish it the way it, quote, should finish. And then they just started the meat stick, and it was just a fun party to follow up maybe the best jam of the set, I thought, in Chalk Dust. And to start wrapping up, they played 2001, which was the perfect place and the perfect time.
That's just always it's such a communicative, it's like a tribal song where everybody, it's kind of like a terrapin where everybody hits the same exact hand motions.
Yeah.
At some rise, some climb. And I'm a big hands up in the eye in the sky. I really am. I'm the guy who got his hands up all night long.
I hope you're not too tall. I don't want to ever be behind you then, because I won't see a thing.
I kind of leave enough that you can see in between. Right. I don't keep them all, but I'm a hands up guy. And I'm throwing punches all night whenever they turn the white lights on, I'm the guy with the fist up in the air.
And even more Still Waiting quotes in 2001. I wrote, "I can't get enough." More guitar-led No Man in No Man's Land. And it's stuff like this that makes a set go very quickly. When I was re-listening to this, I'm like, oh shit, 2 songs left. I just pressed play. It's really something else that time speeds up and slows down depending on how into it you are. And I am all in on this.
I like your comment, best band ever, because that is what I'm sure I said the same exact thing as you did right there. And I'm a dead guy, but I get it. And I think I probably at that exact same moment as you went, fuck, this is the best band ever. Sorry about the cursing.
Who cares? Yeah. No, I say five times a night when I listen to Phish.
Yeah, I say it after the Lawn Boy, but that's what makes me special.
Yeah. He does.
And they close it with Cavern, where I'm like, oh, we're here already? And it was just a refreshing party set after, kind of an uneven, we'll say, East Coast run in the beginning of the summer. This opening show for the Gorge is just, it really put us on the upper level. It made us feel great.
Yeah. And I think the tour only got better from there, personally, which is great. And this was a great launching pad for the rest of the tour.
I think you pointed out a great point that before is that 15 almost spoiled us. We did the Fare Thee Well shows in San Fran and in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was just a religious experience. And what they put out in 15, it was kind of like, I was able to get back in right in 16 when we went to Mexico.
And we went to so many shows, I think. We're like, we need more of that.
But it really was, it kind of was like shit. If we keep comparing it to 15, we're going to miss the moment.
Yeah.
It's like we're missing the moment. Yeah. You enjoy the moment, but this show kind of started going back to that. Yeah, man.
Enjoy it now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so they go off for the encore break and come on, which is very unusual. I had to look this up. They played Makasupa Policeman for the encore.
This actually might be, and I need to go back and check my shows, but this might be my favorite encore that I remember because it's just so unique. And you get the Makasupa Wilson, which I had no voice at this point to even yell the Wilson notes, but the Good Times, Bad Times is such an awesome.
What a way to walk out of a building.
Right? You must feel like a god, to play that solo, to play that sick Zeppelin rock song, and to walk off like, we'll see you tomorrow night.
Yep.
You walk out on just a blissful high. You're like, holy shit, what did I just say? Mm-hmm. At this venue? I couldn't stop. We're walking back up the hill. I keep looking over. I couldn't stop looking over and just going like this. Wow. What the hell? What a moment. What a moment in life. Life is beautiful.
The three of us had a lot to say about the Grateful Dead, Phish on Long Island, and of course, the Gorge. We didn't quite get everything right, so now it's time for the attendance bias fact check. Ben mentioned that he and his father saw Trey Anastasio open for Tom Petty in 2007 at MSG. That show was actually played on June 20th, 2006. While Petty's set was very well received, Trey's opening set received lukewarm reviews from Simeon Cohen on jambands.com. The link to his review is on today's show notes. The Jones Beach show that the three of us discussed at the beginning of this episode was played on August 17th, 2010. It was the first of 2 nights at Jones Beach to close that year's summer tour. As Jeff said, the band opened with Fluffhead, and for some reason, Trey played parts of Wilson and Reba on a tiny toy guitar that, as far as I know, hasn't made a return appearance since. When talking about their family's past shows, Jeff mentioned the Zeppelin show. He is referring to the famous show from October 30th, 2010 in Atlantic City. For that year's Halloween show, rumors were circulating that the band was going to cover Led Zeppelin's second album. Phish faked out the fan base, however, by playing lots of Zeppelin songs during soundcheck during the shows leading up to Halloween. On the 30th, the night before Halloween, they weaved various Led Zeppelin songs in and out of Chalk-Dust Torture and Tweezer. This, of course, spoiled the idea that they would play any Led Zeppelin on Halloween night. When I brought up Phish's show on April 30th, 1994 at the Edge nightclub in Orlando, I made such a big deal of how much I liked that they teased other songs during the intro to David Bowie. It's time for me to listen to that show again because all of those teases happened during the intro to Possum, not Bowie. I had the right idea, but the wrong song. And that's it for today's episode of Attendance Bias. I'd like to thank Jeff and Ben Fortgang for digitally inviting me into their home, Phish.net for providing all of the information we needed, and Phish.in for such an incredible sounding recording of this show. If you enjoy Attendance Bias, please support the show by leaving a rating and a review of the show on your favorite podcast app. Or just tell one person about the podcast. Call them, text them, tell them, spread the word. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next week on Attendance Bias.